Welcome to Finding the Polluters in Your Community with ECHO. ECHO is Enforcement Compliance History, Enforcement and Compliance History Online. It's an incredible tool that's put out by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. It's available for all of us to use. It's something that I use in my work, and my colleague Matt, who's with us tonight, uses, and many other of our Healthy Gulf staff use. And it's something that anybody can use anywhere to look up a community, to look up a particular facility here, anywhere in the United States of America. And it's one of the amazing things about our country is that we do have incredible access to information that people in many other places don't have. And EPA has compiled this information for us and tried to make it easier to use and access so that we can learn about what the pollution sources are in our community, whether they're in compliance, what kind of enforcement status, all kinds of incredible information. So we're going to share a little bit tonight about how to use ECHO, and hopefully it's something that you can incorporate into your work in your community wherever you are. So again, I'm Christian Wagley. I'm our coastal organizer in Florida and Alabama for Healthy Gulf. And joining us this evening, Stephanie Kettle's our communications director. She's going to be mostly behind the scenes, kind of making everything work smoothly for us. So we appreciate Stephanie. And then we're joined this evening also by Matt Rhoda as our senior policy director. And so I've learned a lot from Matt in my 6 years with Healthy Gulf, and excited that he can be here tonight with us and share a little bit more about how he uses ECHO, and again, how all of you can use it in your work. So a couple little housekeeping things. We are broadcasting live on Facebook as well, on the Healthy Gulf Facebook page. So we will try to watch for questions there if anybody has any. The video is also being recorded this evening, so hopefully we can put that up later, maybe on YouTube or somewhere where folks can watch it again. Yeah, Stephanie's keeping us going, keeping us informed there. And then for questions, you come up with a question at any point, feel free to go ahead and type it in the chat, and we will take those all together at the end. And you can type that in on Facebook, or you can type that in here on Zoom as well. So with that, I think we've kind of taken care of some of the intros and things. And with that, I'll just turn it over to Matt and let him get started.
Hey, thanks, Christian. My name is Matt Rhoda. I'm the senior policy director for Healthy Gulf. I'm based in New Orleans. I've been working with Healthy Gulf for 18 years on Saturday. So I've been here for a while, and kind of my focus is heading up our science and policy shop at Healthy Gulf. So focusing on commenting on permit applications, going out and trying to research and witness and document pollution episodes, getting out into the communities and sharing tools and other things to help communities protect their own waters, their own wetlands, their own air. And one of the ways that we do that is a lot of the data that we use is public data. It's federal data, state data, and that's what this is. This ECHO is based on. Now, ECHO is hosted by the EPA, and what we're going to be doing today is going to be more of a kind of walk through, kind of a case study that I've done. So I'll be actually using the website. You should be able to see it up on your screens now. And ECHO stands for Enforcement and Compliance History Online, and the H is really important when we're looking at this, because this is taking a look at what has happened in the past and the history of different facilities, different watersheds. So if you want up-to-date information, this is not the place that you're probably going to want to go. Like if you hear about a sewage spill, ECHO isn't going to record that for weeks, if not months, because a lot of that stuff is reported by the states, which then needs to be go through a quality assurance process, and then finally to get posted on the EPA website, ECHO, and their other databases. But the way that I use ECHO is as kind of a screening tool and a first look at facilities. One of the things that I often have to do is see if I talk to communities that are having complaints about water pollution in a local water body, complaining about air quality, one of the first things I need to do is look what facilities are around this area, whether it's what facilities are in the watershed or what facilities are in a general radius of these areas, to really try to narrow down what facilities are emitting, and then also kind of tracking down who are some of the bad actors in those areas as a first blush. So what I figured I'd do with y'all today is use a real world example that I had here in Louisiana just about a month ago. So a month ago, we had a fire and explosion in Louisiana at Dow Chemical and near Plaquemine, Louisiana. And I, basically knew where this is, but one of my first reactions once we find out that, everybody's safe and things like that is, well, what do we know about this facility? Is this a one-off event? Is this a facility that is chronically out of compliance for its permits? And ECHO is a really good tool to take that first blush, first look at a facility to see how much digging you should be doing. Because EPA gives you, this ECHO gives you kind of a good overview picture. You can dig pretty deep, but not super deep. But then it also gives you good directions to look if you need to start digging into the state level data, which in Louisiana is the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality's EDMS system, and in Florida it's the Oculus system, and those systems, while they have a lot of information on there, can be very difficult, especially if you don't know exactly what you're looking for. And one thing you can get on ECHO is you can get permit numbers and things like that can help refine the questions you need to ask of your state level data. So I'm gonna just kind of go through this. We about a month ago, there were flames and explosion at Dow Chemical, which was north of Plaquemine. That's where I got that information from, a news article. So let's take a look. So whenever you get into ECHO, if you type in ECHO EPA on your browser, you're going to probably come to this page, or you can look at the website to echo.epa.gov, and it takes you to the quick search. And there's a whole lot of information on ECHO, and I'm not going to be going through all of it, but as you can see on the left here, you can analyze trends. You can find specific court cases and settlements that EPA has gone through, a lot of different data visualization, but we're going to really be focusing on the quick search and search options to find out more about facilities. So if you know specifically what you want, or if it's very generally, like you don't really know much, if you just want to enter a zip code, you can do that here. But I tend to try to dig a little deeper, especially if I want to find out about Dow Chemical in Plaquemine, Louisiana. So if you go to the more search options, they give you, so it's pretty robust how much you can look for in the ecosystem. And please let me know. I'm going to try to go as slow as I can, but I know that whenever I click something on my computer, there's a lag to y'all with Zoom and all that. So if you need me to go back and say, what did you click on again? Just let me know, and I'll go ahead and do that. But first of all, I'm just scrolling all down. You can look for geography. You can find out more about the community and the demographics if you're looking about information on tribal land, for example, or if you're looking for particularly environmental justice communities and seeing what's impacting them. You can look at different kinds of facilities if you're looking for a pulp and paper mill, or if you're looking for a petrochemical facility or a sewage treatment plant. You can see which ones are most non-compliant. You can say, I want somebody that has their compliance status that they've had multiple multiple violations over the past quarters, you can really narrow that down as well. And then just more than environmental conditions, this is around if they're discharging into an impaired water body, or if they're in a non-attainment area for air. And you can even get down to what kind of pollutant that they're discharging. So like an example I've done is I was interested in the facilities that discharge nitrate into the water, for example. I could go there and find out what facilities discharge that. But I am worried about Dow Chemical. So what I'll probably end up doing is looking for the geographic location. So I know that I read that it's in Plaquemine, right? And in Louisiana. Oops, there we go. Don't know the zip code. I can't remember exactly the county. It's like, okay, so I put that the geographic information that I have. Media programs, that's like if you want to talk about air, water, air, drinking water, wastewater, or hazardous waste, you can divide that up. But I just want to know about this facility in general, so I'm going to leave that with all media programs. And then I'm going to go down to facility characteristics, and facility characteristics, you can put in a facility name, and a lot of these facilities do have different names, and so you got to try a few times. But you can also narrow it down with if it begins with something, if it matches exactly, or if it contains each term. So I'm probably going to go with it contains each term because I know it's Dow, and the newspaper said Dow Chemical. So I'm going to start from there. And so I've put that in there. And as you can see on the right hand side, as you're going through, it tells you what you're limiting your search to. So it's in the city of Plaquemine in Louisiana. The facility name is Dow Chemical. And then another one is it active and operating? And that was clicked automatically. But there's so many things. If I'm just worried about water or air, or you can really get down to really narrow characteristics if you want. But again, right now I'm just doing an overall search. So that's probably what I want to do. And it gives you the option to have an interactive map or a data table. And the interactive map is best for most reasons because it gives you that geographic view of it. So I'm going to see what comes up here. So it's going to zoom in, and it looks like, if I zoom out a little bit, that I've got 3 things that might have it. And as you can look down here, it also tells you tells you a little information about each of those facilities that's on the map right now. And so I got Dow Chemical Plaquemine, Dow Chemical Company, Louisiana Operations, and Dow Chemical Company Project Gumbo. So there's 3 different Dow projects that are within this big mass of chemical processes here. And if you want to know, like you can see some of them have a red, some of them have yellow, they have a number on them, and they also have a color up on top. So right here, yellow up top, red, and the number 2. So you can go to the reports legend to see what all that means. All the icons. So red means there's a compliance issue. Let's see, I'm not going to go through all of this, but you can kind of figure that out. And then also if you go down here, it uses those charts as well. So and I'm gonna probably look at each one of these, but this one, the red, jumps out because that means there's been a large amount of violations. So I'm going to click on that one and see which one that is. So that looks like that's the Dow Chemical Company. And so it's this middle one here, and you can see it was already purple because I had clicked on it before. And right here, you can see red is out of compliance, blue is in compliance. So you can see for the past 12 quarters, they've been out of compliance for their Clean Air Act permit. And for the past 12 quarters, they have been out of compliance for that RCRA or RCRA, that's their solid waste permit. So like, okay, these are the guys that just blew up. And so this gives you a little snapshot, but you can dig in so much deeper with this. And I just clicked on the name of the facility right below the map. And this is going to start giving you a ton of information. It's going to tell you right away that they put their enforcement and compliance summary. Gives you a little picture of like kind of the center of that. So they are a high priority violators. Like I said, it tells you that they've been out of compliance every single quarter for the past 12 quarters. They've had 7 informal enforcement actions and 6 formal enforcement actions over the past 5 years. And it also tells you what penalties they've gotten from formal enforcement actions over the past 5 years. And so they've been penalized $243,000 for Clean Air Act, which is CAA, and then for solid waste, RCRA, they've been fined almost $100,000. So I automatically, okay, I'm going to need to dig deeper into what are these pollution issues that we're seeing, because they are obviously not good actors when it comes to complying with their permits, especially their air quality permits and their solid waste permits. If we dig down, there is a ton of information on here, and you know, I'm not going to dig too deep into it, but you have lots of identifiers, you have lots of permit numbers for the Clean Air Act and all that. But I'm not going to go through all of these, but this is, if you know, this is where a lot of some of the permit information is. Again, more of the facility information. This tells you here facility SIC code, SIC codes. Those are the codes that tells you what type of facility it is. So it looks like they are making plastic materials and resins. So this is a plastics facility. And then they have other permits for their electrics, for their natural gas that comes in, and for their sewage, and then for plastics again for their water permit. And I'm scrolling through some things. But another thing to look at is the enforcement and compliance. And again, most facilities I look at have like a few entries, if at all. But you can see, once again, this Dow facility in Plaquemines has been a chronic compliance issue. They've, as you can see, the findings, facility reported deviations, reported deviations, they failed. So again, this is really building that I might want to, if there's some information I want to hear, I'm going to do a public records request or go onto Oculus and look at their Clean Air Act permit with their permit number, and I can really narrow down to try and find some of these specific issues. Again, more compliance, and as you can see, they're out of compliance for their Clean Air Act, and up to 8/18/2023, so very recently they've been out of compliance every single quarter. And then also for their solid waste, and same thing, that the months out of compliance, they're actually up to date, and they are a miserable failure here because they've just kept to have the violations. Again, you have Clean Air Act violations, and you might see different sources like source ID, because some facilities have multiple emissions from the same plant. So in this facility, they have different areas of operation. And so it's this one particular area of operation that is the chronic violator, right? And it looks like this is the big pollutant here is hydrochloric acid, which is some nasty stuff to get into the air, get in the water, get on the ground. So again, because this is a chemical facility, they have lots of different sources. And again, and you can see like, all right, it's all coming from basically 3 sources. We have 2 solid waste sources here, and then a little bit lower. And you can see the ID, the last 4 numbers of this ID are 1821, and this are 7880. So that's basically different sources of solid waste. And then this gets into their enforcement actions. And you can actually take a look at the cases where they had, and here's the date issued 7/6/2023. So that happened 8 days before this explosion that they had this filed. So, let's take a look at what happened there. And regretfully, a lot of times they don't put much information in these things. So this is really where you're going to want to go onto your state level your state level database to dig in deeper, because when I went here, it's not really giving me a lot of information, like okay, final order issued in 2023. So again, 8 days before that. Enforcement action data entered on that day. So that's when it was recorded. And then here you can see the penalties, right? And it looks like the EPA didn't get anything, and that this was a state violation, and the state settled for $120,000. Keep in mind that for facilities that when they violate the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, they can be liable to around $53,000 per day of violation. And given that this facility has been out of compliance for 5 years straight, that is a pretty small fine for that, right? And then just the fact that they apparently gave him this fine, and then 8 days later the facility blew up or had an explosion and a fire, right? So these are all kind of red flags that are being raised to me of things that I can dig deeper on. Like I can go into for Louisiana, their electronic data management system, or in Florida I would be going into Oculus to search for specific things. And this information is very useful, right? Because I could look at this and I could say, okay, this is the FRS number that I want. I would like the final order because it's telling me that. And you can get and then here's the case number, so you can be referencing very specific things, because that's really important whenever you're doing a records request or if you're doing a search of data. The more specific you can be, the easier it is, or the harder it is for them to say we can't find that, or we can't give that to you. If you say I want this piece of information, it's a lot harder for them to say no. But if you make it so broad, they're like, oh, it's going to take forever and it's going to take us a long time. Like, no, I want this. I want all the information just around case number LA000 blah 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 566. So I just jumped back to the main page for this, and then you can find out more about what water bodies it's on, This is on the Intercoastal Waterway, on Bayou Borbido, but it's actually, and this is where Louisiana is kind of weird because we have lots of levees, and so this is right on the Mississippi River, and it's technically in the these watersheds, but it actually discharges a lot of its pollution into the Mississippi River as well, and that's not actually recorded on this. And then we can just take a look at all of the pollution that they're putting out there. We can see here's this references the toxic release inventory, and that's also the TRI. And that's another EPA database, which is also, you know, if you're kind of a data geek like me, that's also really fun one to dig into. And they have to report how many pounds of pollution each of these facilities is discharging. And so I think, yeah, in pounds. And this Echo is really nice. If you use these little information things, they actually tell you quite a bit. So if you don't know what this is, I can click on this and it tells you the number and days of total releases in pounds that was released. And so we can see just how many pounds of 1,3-butadiene that they're discharging every year, 15,000 pounds. And this is all also information if you're trying to, if this facility is close to you, or if you're concerned, know people that are concerned about it, you can look at this information and say, this facility is emitting 1.2 million pounds of ammonia into the air and into the water, into the environment. This is air and water, that the TRI, and that can be really raise awareness for people and really start educating what is in what's coming from these facilities. Because a lot of times people are like, well, we're within our limits, we're good. It's like, well, I still want to know how much you're putting out there. And so through Echo, you can get this TRI data that has, and yeah, that's especially when you're in these chemical facilities, it's crazy. Gonna go and keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And then finally, I got to the end of all the different pollutants that they're discharging and how many pounds they're putting into the facility. You can also look into their different loadings and under the Clean Water Act. Each facility needs to put out DMRs, discharge monitoring reports. So you can dig into these things to see just where they are, what they're putting in. If they're over, it'll be noted here. In this one, they aren't violating their Clean Water Act permit. It's the only permit they're not violating. And then you can also look at environmental justice data, and then I'm going to be handing it over to Christian. But this is also really interesting and really important, that it gives you the demographic profile of the surrounding area, and you can change that. This is 1 mile, and you can change it up to 5 miles, right? And it will tell you all of this information, how many people live there, education level, racial breakdown, all that kind of stuff, income breakdown. And then up here, this is kind of the aggregates. And so within a mile, this facility is very high. This is the US percentile. So this means that people that live here have a 93% higher average, a chance, or it's a percentile, not a percent, but if you have a bell curve of people being exposed to a facility, they're way on the edge. That means that they're getting a lot more exposure than most people in the United States. And then they do the nice thing to highlight, to put the exclamation point whenever this is bad. And so what I've learned from this is, that there is a facility that I know is people are concerned about because it just blew up. That I've learned that this is in a community that is already overburdened with pollution. And they have probably experienced these kinds of things before. And it gave me a lot of detail of what permits to look at. And so what I did after this was I went into the Louisiana databases and started downloading some of their reports, talked to some reporters about the issue, and we were able to raise awareness about this. It got elevated up. There's an EPA investigation with them now, so it's not just a state investigation. But this is using Echo as a tool, again, gives you a good picture of what's going on in a particular area or with a particular facility. It's not the end all be all, because, you know, they say, for example, their violation this quarter. Well, were they violating every month that quarter? You're gonna have to, they might like push back, so you might need to dig a little deeper. But this is one of the main tools that I use for getting that overview information about a facility, about an area, to see what I should be honing in on. I just gave you a ton of information and walked you through just using a website here. So I know it wasn't the most compelling information. I'm going to be handing over to Christian in just a minute, but happy to take questions after Christian. And yeah, so put those in the chat, and we can get to them afterwards. And also we'll share our contact information, so if anybody has questions, I can also work with you offline, well, online, but off of this, to get to figure out what you need to know. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Christian.
Thanks so much for that, Matt. Yeah, very, very informative. I'm going to try to build on the base you've set here and try to go at it in a little bit different angle that I hope people find instructive. So I'm going to share my screen. And by the way, Matt, what happened at that facility? Was anybody hurt or killed in that explosion?
There were no reported major injuries. I think a couple people went to the hospital, but luckily it seemed like everybody was present and accounted for. So I mean, it could have been a lot worse. But the main concern is just the pollution, and then they were also having to flush a lot of the polluted water into the Mississippi River, and that went into the Mississippi River, which is also the water that folks in St. James Parish and New Orleans drink. So yay.
Well, thank you again for that. So we find ourselves here back at the Echo website, and I'm gonna rather than look up a specific facility. So remember, we've got a choice here starting out. You may not know the name. You certainly won't have the ID. They all have this ID number. You're not going to know that number. But I'm going to do it here just by location. You all know I live in Pensacola, Florida. Most of my work is here in the Panhandle. So I'm going to try just pulling up Pensacola here. Scroll down where I can see that. And you know, the first thing that comes up is there's a dot that tells you how many are in a particular area. And so I've got to kind of go in a little bit closer to start drilling in. And once I do that, the individual facilities pop up, these little blue squares. Some are other colors like yellow or beige. And what I'm going to do here is in the top right of the image here, where it says search as map moves, I'm going to click that. So that way, as I scroll around here, it'll populate with new facilities as I move around the area. So I know a couple of the folks on here are from Pensacola. You may recognize here, this is the interchange area between Interstate 10 and I-110. And one of the things you notice is a lot of these facilities are clustered along roadways. And so that's because many of these facilities are relatively small facilities. They may be a gas station or a repair shop or a Lowe's or Home Depot. And a lot of these are facilities have, say, stormwater permits that allow them to discharge stormwater offsite, for example. A lot of these are what they call small quantity generators. That would be like maybe a battery store that takes in batteries. They've got batteries sitting there. That's a hazardous material, and they're regulated for that. An auto repair shop as well is going to have things like antifreeze and They're going to collect used oil and various things like that, and they're regulated for those things to make sure that they're handled and managed properly, and they have to have a permit for that, and they have to file reports on that and how they're managing those things. So that's what a lot of these facilities are. These are smaller facilities, probably in that range. In fact, we can just pop on, maybe click on, let's see, click on one here, Potter's Auto Care, which is not, so just a little auto repair shop. Sorry, I lost it there. Let's see if I can get it to hold. Well, it doesn't want to stay on it, but they're having some compliance issues anyway, it looks like. But as I scroll north, and those of you who live in the Pensacola area know that we, especially for Florida, we have some heavier industry that's not as prevalent in Florida, but it's mostly on the north side of Pensacola. So as I scroll up to the north side of town here, I'm coming up by the Escambia River mouth, the delta there on the right. And now I'm starting to see, if you see kind of on the, where I'm scrolling around with my little cursor here, you see 3 yellow squares with a one in the middle there. These are major facilities. And so that one there is the Gulf Clean Energy Center, which is an FPL. By the way, clean energy is a misnomer. It runs on fossil gas, but you know, they can call it whatever they want. We do have, you know, it's freedom of speech. This other one, I'm not sure why they don't stay up for a second when I click on them. That wants to repopulate, but that's our main wastewater treatment plant right there. And then this one here is one I'm going to hone in on. This is the Ascend Performance Materials. So this is, we're going to go in on a detailed facility report on this. This is the largest integrated nylon facility in the entire world. It's on the north side of Pensacola. Here's the kind of the header page for that. Facility summary, kind of like Matt showed before, kind of start out with just basic geographic information, and then the list of all the related reports. This particular facility discharges far more chemicals than any other facility in Florida, by far. And again, Florida is not, thankfully for those of us in Florida, it's not nearly as industrial as Louisiana and Texas, but for us here in Florida, this is by far our biggest discharger according to the toxic release inventory that Matt mentioned to you before, and it's going to show up on my my screen here as well. But as we scroll down, we're going to see similar to what Matt showed, the enforcement and compliance summary. And the statute on the left here, these are various federal laws. So most all of these laws are dealing with our federal laws. And by the way, most of these were passed in the late 60s and early 70s when our nation was really at an environmental crisis. We had rivers on fire. We had people driving with their headlights on in the middle of the day because the air was so polluted you couldn't see. And so most all of that environmental legislation was passed in a relatively short period of time in the late 60s and 70s. But those, if you go from top to bottom there, it's CAA is Clean Air Act, and we have CWA, Clean Water Act. RCRA is the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. That's going to deal with things like those batteries and the waste oil and things like that I mentioned to you. SDWA is the Safe Drinking Water Act, which is self-explanatory. Although interestingly, it also deals with the underground injection and control, which is these facilities that will sometimes put waste materials deep underground, supposedly so deep that it's never going to intersect with our drinking water. That actually falls under that program as well. And then finally, the last one there is TSCA, which is the Toxic Substances Control Act. So getting into more of the toxic things that are clearly toxic, as opposed to like RCRA, which is, like I said, more resource materials, like I said, used batteries, oil, things like that. They're not inherently toxic. So those are some of the major federal laws that these facilities have permits for. And interestingly, in this case, because this is such a large facility and they do so much there, they've got all of those permits in play for them. They're heavily regulated, and they have to come in under all of those. So as we scroll down, like Matt said, there's so much information, it can be kind of overload, and the best way to learn, like a lot of these things, is just to start going through it and playing with it, and you click on something and you see where it leads you, and the more you explore it, you learn what some of these different acronyms are, which I don't even pretend to know all of them, certainly off the top of my head. But these are different system, databases and things that EPA has that they get reports on, and it does list the statute that's in play that I talked about earlier. If we just scroll down through those, this part's kind of hard to follow, but And then we get into the different, I think that's the, under facility address, these are all the different addresses associated with the individual permits, which is mostly all the same address up there on ChemTrail. Sometimes they have multiple permits on the same site or nearby that may have different addresses. So those are all shown. And then the facility has a code that's unique to it for each type of regulatory scheme or statute that it's falling under here. So you see there's one for air, there's one for its NPDES permit, which is basically its water discharges to, say, the river nearby, which in this case would come from stormwater. So those are all there. And then going down a little bit farther, we get into that same kind of compliance monitoring history that Matt talked about, showing whether they passed tests or failed tests for various CAA is Clean Air Act. So it goes through those. It's a lot of it. I mean, it's a big facility, a lot of discharge. And then it just takes them one by one. Clean Water Act, RCRA. I'm going to scroll down to where it's a little bit easier to read, which is down here when we get into compliance history by quarter, because they've started to color code down here now. And that makes it easier at a quick glance to tell whether a facility is in compliance or not, when they've had problems in the past. So if you look at this, you'll see in yellow, there were violations for different quarters that are listed here back in 2022. And in fact, I can scroll over and see all the way up till now. Adjust that on my screen here. Yeah. Violation unresolved is where we are right now. And that looks like it's for Clean Air Act. And then scrolling down into Clean Water Act. And this is going to be, and find that I can scroll back over to the left here. Here we go. So for Clean Water Act, they have to do, looks like the latest is they've had some violations in the past that are indicated in yellow there, but it looks like maybe they're okay now. Some of these are on the left there are tests that they have to do. That IC25 is a test where it basically puts some of their effluent in water with fish. Those are like top minnows, I think, that are tested, and you see how their I think growth is inhibited. There's various ways of doing that. There's other tests where they see how many animals died within a certain amount of time. This is a different one using a top minnow. And then you see a bunch of different pollutants and other measurables there: pH, phosphorus, chlorine. And these are all going to be related to their surface water discharge from stormwater running off the site when it rains, and what it picks up along the way. So next it goes to RCRA. So again, that's the Resource Conservation Recovery Act. It looks like they had some problems earlier this year where you see the red significant non-compliance. And I'm not sure, it's hard for me I haven't been able to figure out exactly where EPA draws the line between what's significant and what's not significant, but when it shows up in red, that's what they're saying. It was a significant non-compliance event. So probably they fail at a test or something was in violation, as opposed to some of the violations you see are more administrative in nature, where they didn't file the right paperwork, they didn't get something in time. It could be something like that that's less of an issue. So sometimes you have to dig a little bit deeper to find that out. Just like Matt showed, it goes through enforcement actions, letters that have been sent. One of the things you learn from looking through this stuff is it's very rare to see any facility get much of a penalty at all. I mean, we're talking a few $1,000s for companies that make, hundreds of millions annually. It's very, very rare to see something really taken to court and any kind of large fines administered. You really have to be a bad actor. Although the one Matt, certainly the facility Matt showed, they may be headed in that direction. Although I don't know if the fines are so minimal, they've just been paying them, I guess, and getting away with it. But finally, as we get toward the bottom here and go through some of the same things that Matt showed, this toxics release inventory I think is really important, because for this particular facility, it is the largest discharger in the state of Florida by far. Most of that's being injected underground. Again, supposedly so deep that we're not going to have to deal with it. That's what they're saying. And that is, if we scroll down here, most of that is see where it says nitrate compounds. That's the biggest number on the list. We're talking over 20 million pounds annually. And of course, there's a bunch of water diluting that, billions of pounds, water going down with that, carrying that down. That's their biggest discharge is that. And I'm trying to figure out more of I'm going through their waste characterization now and their permit to find out more of what's actually in that. It just labeled as nitrate compounds, but it's water that's been through their process, making nylon. And one interesting thing about that is they have a facility up there. I guess it's still there. It was there a while back. That's where they make NutraSweet as a byproduct of all this stuff. So imagine consuming a product that comes out of a nylon plant. I wouldn't want to consume NutraSweet myself, but this is what it comes out of, related to all these kind of nasty chemicals. But the TRI is really important because that list comes out every year. It's been required since the 80s, and it's almost like a shame list for companies because you don't want to be the top company or near the top on that list in terms of being one of the biggest dischargers in the United States. And what has happened every year is the county where I live here, Pensacola, or Escambia County, is one of the top dischargers of toxic TRI chemicals in the nation every year because of this one facility. If this one facility wasn't in Escambia County, we wouldn't be anywhere close to the top of the list. But this facility discharges such a huge volume, mainly those nitrate compounds, that it makes us one of the top discharging counties in the nation, even though at first glance you don't see that much industry here compared to when you go through Texas or Louisiana or New Jersey or someplace else. So, and then wrapping up, it's got at the bottom here, like Matt showed, the EJ screen, which EPA has a whole nother website for that if you want to get in deep on that. In this case, this is a relatively rural area around the plant. There's a lot of marsh around it, a lot of forest land, and there's not as many real inherent EJ issues showing up here. We would look for that 80th percentile and above, and we don't really see that here. But just scrolling down, and this is a combination that uses census data and then the exposure of communities to nearby sources of pollution, which can even be things like highways. So as I scroll down in Pensacola here, more into the city, you see here those areas in dark purple. Those are going to be areas where there's those are census tracts that are going to have more environmental justice issues, where minority populations of low socioeconomic status that are living adjacent to sources of pollution, and those things combined are going to show up on the map there. So that's an incredibly useful tool. It's integrated into this, but again, it's called EJ Screen, and you can just find it on your own with EPA. It's a whole separate site that allows you to really dig in deep on that. So again, I've kind of used this from the geography side of things, to go, and I encourage you to do that in your community. Just type in your zip code, type in the name of your city, and go and just look. That's a good place to start, is look around to see who's in compliance, who isn't, how many facilities are around, which ones are major, which ones are minor, and just kind of use it that way as a first glance. And then you can start digging in deeper if you find something that's that's problematic. I think I didn't show you before, but on the right side here, if I click on showing that there's 6 facilities with current violations, so if I click, those all come up nicely for me. So that's one way to use this, would be to say, hey, who are the problem children right now, right? Which are the ones that are not obeying the law at this moment or having problems? So it makes it very easy to go over there and click that in the search bar there and come up with which ones are the problem ones right now, as opposed to just scrolling randomly through the map. But both types are useful, because you may just want to know what facilities are near you or near your community. But this is a really convenient way to find out which ones are having problems currently at the moment, and are potentially in violation of the law, which really leads us to what do you do with this information? How do Matt and I, how does Healthy Gulf use this information? As Matt said, it's really a lot of times a starting point that allows us to find where the problems are, and then we go in for a deeper dive. Here in Florida, we have an online system called Oculus. Matt mentioned it, and I think pretty much every Gulf state has something similar. I don't have experience with the ones in the other states the way Matt would, but I do use Oculus here, and I will promise to send out an email to everybody who joined us this evening with some information. I'll give you the link to Oculus. I know some of the folks on the call are from Florida, and maybe some of the others as well, so that you can take a deeper dive there if you want to get in and get even. If you go into Oculus, you can see things like the actual letters that they write to these companies that say, hey, you're in violation, and here's what you've got to do. Or you'll see email correspondence back and forth between them and the regulators. You can get a copy of the actual permit. Those are kind of details that don't really show up in the ecosystem, but you can get those through the individual through the individual state system. So I guess that's most of what I wanted to cover with that. I just encourage you all again to put any questions that you have from Matt and I in the chat. But I think the way you use this information again is it's a good starting point to find where the problems are. And then you're going to want to go in and go deeper. And if you're working on environmental issues in your community, you may decide to do a campaign, say, to get maybe the state agency to act to enforce the regulations on one of these companies or one of these facilities that's in violation. Maybe they're dragging their feet, and maybe you have a chance to get that information, out to the media and get that covered. Which, if you didn't have access to this kind of information, you wouldn't even know that it's going on, because otherwise, the only people that typically know are the agency doing the regulation and the regulated entity, the private company or business. And so it rarely gets out to the public. But with this tool here, it has the ability to do that, and that way you can use it to apply the pressure you need to hopefully get something resolved that otherwise might not get resolved as quickly. So that's how we've used it before. I know Matt's come to Pensacola here, and we've gone down and met with, for example, our local office of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection to push on them to enforce on a particular facility that was having chronic problems and they weren't addressing it quickly enough. And we feel like they did act more quickly after that, and it made a difference when we sat down with them. But we came in with all the information in hand because we had looked at ECHO, we had looked at their system, and we had all that information to know where the problems are. And it's kind of like the old lawyer thing: you don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. So with systems like this, you can come in armed with all that information and have it in hand and be well informed. And that way, if they're not giving you a straight answer, you know it because you've already looked it up and you've already got the information. So. Well, with that, I don't know if we had any questions in here coming in. Oh, let me pull up here. Sorry, just as we wrap up here, just sorry, we've seen that. Just kind of our closing slide here with more information about Healthy Golf. You can always sign up for updates at our website, and I'll send that out when I send out the email with that additional information. But just a reminder, Healthy Golf is really the only nonprofit advocacy group that works Gulf wide. We work from Florida to Texas. We have people working in each of the 5 Gulf states. We were actually founded in Florida in the mid 1990s, and we've been working all of that time on a variety of water and air and climate and energy issues, and increasingly more and more directly with the people and the communities that live along the Gulf Coast and are affected by all of these issues as well. So please check us out on our website. Please sign up for updates. We'll send you an occasional email and update you on what's going on. And so I need to check the chat here and see if we've got any questions. Oh, there was a comment about ADEM. Oh, Matt covered that. Okay, thank you, Matt. I've never worked with the Alabama's. I get the updates from Alabama, but I haven't dug into their system. Have you used it, Matt? Is it friendly, or? You're muted, Matt. Let's see if we can.
I got it.
There we go.
Yeah, I have not really used, just from a quick search. ADEM you can search for public documents online using e-file is what they call theirs. And I don't have a lot of any experience, but here's that, Barbara, if you wanted to play around with that. I was just trying to.
And Jasmine shared that in there as well. Thank you, Jasmine. I know my interaction with the ADEM system has been, I signed up for, and I get certain emails when they're considering a new permit for something, the ones that I selected. And so I get those emails almost every week. So I can keep track of things that way.
Yeah, and looking at the ADEM, their e-file, it looks like they have a lot up there, like correspondence and all that, but it is just a list of all the documents that they have. And so again, you might be able to find some more specific information on ECHO that you can use to narrow your searches on what you're trying to find on ADEM, because it looks like there's they do have a how-to guide, which maybe would help you, but yeah, basically, similar to Louisiana, there's just like a lot of information. And so you really need to know what you're looking for.
We had a comment from Robert, which was so true about Mosaic in Florida, which anybody who lives in Florida knows about Mosaic. Now, Matt covers that issue pretty much for us here in Florida, and I'm sure, Matt, we didn't scroll down into that area, but I know Mosaic shows up on here, and you could probably get a lot of information, right? And I'm sure their numbers are just staggering in terms of what they discharge. I don't know if Robert's had a chance to look at it yet through this system, but it should, yeah, it should show up in Echo. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, Matt. Or...
Yeah, with when Robert put that in, I did a quick search, and for those of y'all that this is the phosphogypsum waste or phosphate system phosphogypsum waste facility that's on the eastern side of Tampa Bay, and it's this massive facility where they make phosphate fertilizer, but a byproduct of that is phosphogypsum waste, which is highly acidic, toxic, and radioactive, and they store it in these huge piles in right along the bay there. Like they're probably the highest, the tallest topographic thing you would see in the greater Tampa St. Pete area outside of skyscrapers. Yes, and so it looks like that they do have, some violations and significant violations, especially under their RCRA, which is the solid waste regulations. And it's important to note, just with phosphate, you're making me go down a rabbit hole here. With phosphate, right now, phosphate is not considered a toxic substance because it has been decided so administratively, not scientifically. And that's one of the things we're trying to do, is get that amendment out of there so they actually treat it as the toxic substance that it is. But yeah, it'd probably be a fascinating one to dig into with EDMS. Fascinating in a horrible way. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. I also want to thank Jasmine for dropping the link to the EJ screen into the chat. So thank you. And we will include that in our follow-up kind of wrap up thank you email as well with additional resources. So we'll include that in there too. Matt, one question I thought of is you've been doing this longer than I have. Has there ever been any thought that, this is self-reporting by the companies, although they're using a third party, they're typically using a consultant or somebody that's gathering the emissions data or doing the test for them in a lab. They're not doing it themselves, but they're under, they're paying those people to do it. Have there ever been instances where we thought that the information was not accurate purposefully in some way to help the company out? I've not heard of those, but I don't know if you've come across that.
You hear stories about a lot of places they might not have their monitors on when they're doing startup and shutdown for air monitoring. That's when a lot of the pollution comes at. Also, a lot of these facilities for their water permits have to do a grab sample once a day or once a week, depending on, the size of the facility, or even once a month for like really small sewage treatment plants and things like that. And so they have discretion as to when they grab those samples. And so it would not surprise me at all, and it would make total sense if they were grabbing those samples when they thought their water was relatively clean comparatively. So, just the fact that you see all these violations and they are self-reported. So, I mean, this is a best case scenario you're looking at here. So I've never run across like falsifying. I'm sure it happens at some points, but I haven't really come across it in the work that I've done.
Gotcha. Well, I don't see any more questions, and we're right at 1 hour. So it's been great fun being with all of you this evening. Appreciate the good comments and the good questions and interest. Matt, did you have any wrap-up comments or?
No, that's I don't think so. Robert, you said you're gonna pass it on to some tribal members that work in those areas. You can select for just tribal areas, as long as they're I think it's only federally recognized tribes, and so if the tribes we work with aren't federally recognized, then it probably won't be nearly as helpful. But that's awesome, passing this on. And I appreciate everybody's time and, you know, listening and taking your Wednesday evening to spend some time with us.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Matt, for sharing your expertise. And thank you, Stephanie, for coordinating everything behind the scenes and all of that. And again, we encourage you to sign up for email updates from Healthy Golf, find us on social media and follow us there, and keep doing the good work that you're all doing out in the community. And please be in touch with either myself or Matt or Stephanie or anybody at Healthy Golf if we can help you out. And with that, I wish you all a good evening.